The following production is brought to you by the Talkin Buds Leafs Show.
Episode 257 of the Talkin Buds Leafs Show. How's it going, everybody? I'm Rob. He's Ryan. I'm not going to lie. Friday morning, we're signing on here, and my anxiety is peaked with respect to Anthony Stolarz, because as of the time of this recording, we still do not know the extent of the injury. He left after the first period on Thursday night against the Anaheim Ducks. I think it was Rielly who said during the game that he didn't believe that it was it wasn't that bad of an injury. Then after the game, Berube's like, no, he's got to do some tests. We don't really know much. We'll find out more tomorrow. And then I saw this morning, I think Dreger says they're waiting for test results, and they've recalled Dennis Hildeby. They've got a back-to-back this weekend. So at the very least, I don't think you'll see Anthony Stolarz this weekend. I think you'll see Woll in one game and Hildeby in the other. I mean, after his performance on Tuesday night against the New Jersey Devils, which I said the greatest Leaf goaltending performance I've seen in the last 10 years, I really, really hope that it's not. It looked like I saw a clip circling on Twitter last night where it was like a Joe Woll type thing where he went post to post.
That's what I was going to say. Man, he's been hanging out with his goaltending tandem partner for too long. It's starting to rub off on him.
Yeah, it's like, and he got up and he was kind of shaking his leg a little bit, and you just hope that it's not like a groin or something like that, because that's the type of thing that lingers all season long. And this guy has been so fantastic that he has been their MVP. He's the reason their record is what it is. I understand Mitch Marner, all that, but this guy has been spectacular. So I'd be lying to you if I said my anxiety wasn't a bit peaked signing on to do this show with you this morning.
Yeah, I think the only unfortunate thing is we've seen in the past, and this happened to Joe Woll last year, is when a goalie is playing so well and he's so on top of his game and you feel like they're about to go on a run, and then something like this happens, and then they're gone for a bit and they come back and they're just not the same as they were before. Right. That's the only part that gives me anxiety, because I've seen that happen to so many other goaltenders before. But in terms of this happening, I said at the start of the season, I've said throughout the entire season, that this is exactly what was going to happen to their goaltending situation throughout the entire year. One guy's got to get hurt. The other guy's got to get hurt. Two guys who have injury history. Sometimes they might both be hurt. And Dennis Hildeby's your number one goalie. So, I mean, in that way, like, I was kind of expecting it, so that I'm kind of lost a little. I don't know how as much anxiety that way, but you just hope that he can come back and continue doing what he was doing, because he's been the best goalie they've had through 2 months in this whole entire era, and in a long time in this franchise. So, yeah, that's the only unfortunate part, really.
This is complete hindsight, but in hindsight, was it a mistake to start him on Thursday against the Anaheim Ducks?
No, I'm not playing that game. I'm not playing the hindsight game. The guy played the game of his life. You know what you do when you play the game of your life? You get rewarded with more playing time. Yeah, like, that's what pro sports is. You play well, you get more field time, ice time, playing time. It is what it is. If you look, I was on Twitter too, and people are pointing out the whole, he's only played 28 games for a reason, and pointing out his injury history. So it's unfortunate, but I'm not playing any hindsight game with that. That's silly.
Well, and the Ducks are a former team of his, and it's kind of how it goes in the NHL. You let the guy play his old team. So I'm with you. I think that's ridiculous. And listen, Joe Woll, this is his time to shine. Like, they paid the guy in the offseason. It looks like Stolarz is going to be out for a little bit of time here. This is your time to shine and your time to take back what, going into the season, everyone had the depth chart stacked as Woll 1, Stolarzs 2, and that flipped pretty much as soon as the season began. And now this is Joe Woll's time to take it back. He's been pretty good
Yeah,
and
not worried
I think
at
this
all.
is an opportunity for him. I agree. This
If you look at
opportunity.
if you look at his numbers, he's right up there with Anthony Stolarz in terms of numbers and everything. He's near the top of the league for the amount of games he's played. I'm not worried at all. I think Joe Woll's ready for this. Now he needs to stay healthy though. That's the only thing I'm worried about.
You just took the words out of my mouth. So that's the only concern about Joe Woll. Because listen, we're one post-to-post move away, or one crash the net away from Dennis Hildeby and Matt Murray being the two goalies. Now, both of them have had pretty good seasons with the Marlies.
Well, I saw that Matt Murray's not playing anymore. He tweaked something 5 games ago, and he hasn't seen the ice since. So Dennis Hildeby is the other option. So let's call up Dennis Hildeby and let's see what happens. It's been the theme of this entire season. Guys have been going down left, right, and center. It's just another guy you got to fill a hole with, and it's up to Joe Woll to not tweak something and kind of carry the mail a little bit here.
All right, I feel like you and I have been avoiding what's going to be our main topic of discussion on today's show, because you and I are a bit contrarian in the sense that we don't like to buy into narratives that are in the media. I find, and listen, I always feel the need to preface this because I don't want people to think that I'm taking a shot at the media and people who cover this team. When you cover a team every day, you do have to manufacture storylines to an extent. And so I do not envy that job. So in no way am I criticizing people. Trust me, you and I do two shows a week, and we look at each other sometimes going, what the fuck are we going to talk about?
Yeah.
But right now, depth scoring is the number one topic of discussion with respect to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm not sitting here saying that that's incorrect. I mean, if you pull up the stats of this team, like goals and points, you get past the big boys and you got Rielly hanging around and OEL hanging around, and then it falls off an absolute cliff. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that this narrative, like I said, is bullshit. It's not. There's definitely some truth to it. Also, the one stat that everyone is glommed onto is the fact that they're 23rd in the league in goals for. But the thing that I've always come back to is this has been this team's identity throughout the core 4 era. So to all of a sudden sit here and start banging your fist on the table and going, well, there's no depth scoring. There's no depth scoring. There's never been depth scoring. There's never been depth scoring. It's always been the big boys drive the bus. The big boys produce the points. The big boys get the ice time. And that's kind of how it goes. And from Sheldon Keefe to Craig Berube, that hasn't necessarily changed. I would say it's a little more evenly distributed from an ice time perspective. But at the same time, when it's time to score a goal or time to get cooking, he throws the same guys in a blender and puts the same guys out there.
Yeah. And then there's a reason why there's a top 6 and a bottom 6 in an NHL lineup. Like, I just want to define, like, okay, when we're talking about depth scoring, okay, we're throwing out Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Matthews, and anybody else. Who else? Those are the 4 guys.
Anyone. If you're talking from a forward perspective, yes, you're anyone outside the core 4. And they actually made, I think it was Gary Galley who made the point last night. You could probably throw Nyes in there too, because Nyes has been a top point. Nyes has got 10 goals.
Which I think also is a theme with this era too, because you threw Bunting in the top 6, he produced. You threw Hyman in the top 6, he produced. So it seems like there's always that extra guy thrown in the top 6 that kind of provides offense. But it's guys who play regularly in the bottom 6 who supposedly struggle with depth scoring. So who are we really talking about here? We're talking about Max. And look at the injuries too. There's been a lot of injuries this season. Okay. So when you're thinking about depth scoring, to me, you're talking about Max Domi. You're talking about Nick Robertson. You're talking
Bobby McMahon.
About Bobby McMahon has 6 goals this year, though. Like, to me, he's provided offense. To me, he's the piece that's missing right now in their lineup that helps him with depth scoring, because I know he had a slow start, but once he got cooking, he has 6 goals. Look around the league, though, man. Like, look at all the top teams in the league. Like, maybe one team doesn't have a guy who has like 18 goals, and there's a bunch of guys who has like 10. But like, I challenge anyone to do a little research and come at me in the comments and give me 5 hockey teams in the NHL. Give me 5 that have really good depth scoring. I please do it, because I was
well,
going
this is
through
what
it
I
this
mean when I
morning.
say this narrative's a bit media manufactured. Like, that's my point.
I know.
Is you're kind of looking at things. You made the point in our last episode that a lot of criticism with respect to this team right now is a nitpick, and I find this to be somewhat of a nitpick. Like, you can point at certain guys. That's the thing. Like, I don't love the blanketing approach to this. Like, I don't love depth scoring as a whole. It's like, no, Nick Robertson hasn't been very good. He hasn't pulled his weight. Max Domi, he's been injured, but he's come back, hasn't been very good, hasn't pulled his weight.
Yeah, he doesn't have a goal. He's played 21 games. He doesn't even have a goal.
Like, that's
he hasn't gotten a point. He's been stuck at 6 points for 2 months.
Like, that's just not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. So if you want to, like I said, if you want to point your finger at certain guys and say he needs to be better, and that would make a difference, sure, absolutely. But I do struggle with this whole, like, blanket, the team as a whole struggles with depth scoring because of the point you just made. Like, look around the league. Like, who around the league has a third and fourth line that's lighting it up every night?
Yeah, give me 5 teams. Like, I know the Capitals are scoring a lot of goals. I know the Devils are scoring a lot of goals, but you don't think the Edmonton Oilers, who everyone picked as the Stanley Cup winner, every single time I turn on Oilers broadcast or something, they're always talking about depth scoring. You know what the difference is between, and I look at this issue in a different way. I know their identity has been goals for through the past couple seasons, but has it? Has it really? Because when it comes down to when it's time to actually score goals, the guys who are supposed to don't. They don't score goals. And that's the difference between the Edmonton Oilers and the Toronto Maple Leafs, is when it's time to score goals, when it matters, the top guys on that team score goals and the top guys on this team do not score goals.
Exactly. And that's, like, people always say, they point to the playoffs with this too and saying, wouldn't it be great if, like, Max Domi could score you a big goal in the playoffs? It's like, yes, it would, but the big boys who you pay all the money to don't fucking score, with the exception of William Nylander.
Matthews scored a big goal in the playoffs.
Exactly. And their identity from the regular season doesn't carry into the playoffs because, like I said, the identity has always been the big boys get all the cookies. That's how this fucking team is built, right? And the difference is when you get into the playoffs and the game tightens up, they're unable to push through. So that identity kind of goes out the window. Mm-hmm. That's the problem.
I think the best case scenario for this team going forward is you have your top 4, the guys who supposedly score every night, which they do for the most part in the regular season. And then if Bobby McMahon comes back and Max Pacioretty stays healthy, then you hope for Nyes continuing his production. Pacioretty playing in the top 6, does more what he did against the Ducks, keeps contributing offensively, and Bobby McMahon continues contributing offensively as well. And Max Domi needs to get better. I have given up on Nick Robertson as an NHL hockey player. It's not happening
with this team. That's a whole other sidebar. Yeah. But I think if Nick Robertson went somewhere and got to, like, look at the Anaheim Ducks. Like, if you traded Nick Robertson to the Anaheim Ducks, he'd immediately be in their top 6. And he'd get the reps that he's just never going to get here. That's the thing with Nick Robertson, in my opinion.
I think when you're looking at the lineup, if you're like, I'm just not expecting offense from Pontus Holmberg, David Kampf, Ryan Reeves, Connor Dewar, Steven Lorentz. Those guys are just not going to score you goals in the National Hockey League. They're going to find other ways to contribute, which is forechecking, cycling the puck, keeping the puck down in the O zone for as long as they possibly can when they're on the ice. And they're going to chip in with one, like Lorentz is going to chip in with one a month, hopefully. And maybe Holmberg can pull a horseshoe out of his ass again like he did in New Jersey. But it's just like depth scoring to me, Domi, Pacioretty, Bobby McMahon. That's it. Those are the only 3 guys who I think are capable of chipping in more offensively.
The 24-25 NHL season still has that new car smell, and the action is heating up at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL.
It's super easy for first-timers to get started at DraftKings Sportsbook. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
I want to hone in on Max Domi specifically here because he's come back from the injury, and I just feel like they're in kind of a pickle with Max Domi because after having watched him now for a season and a quarter, it's very clear that Max Domi is the type of guy that he can excel when he's playing with good players, right? Like, if you put him on a third line with Fraser Minton, who upside is huge, but is not at this point in his career an elite NHL player, and Pontus, he's not going to be able to do much. He needs playing with an Austin Matthews will elevate Max as well and bring the best out of Max. Having said that, though, like you look at their top six, it's like Matthews and Marner are stable together again. Like they're just back together again. Mitch Marner being incredible when Matthews was gone and being able to wheel and deal on his own is just completely forgotten and gone. We're just going to pretend like it never happened. And then you've got a second line of Pacioretty, Tavares, and Nylander, which is actually working out pretty well. Like Max Pacioretty, that was the Pacioretty game on Thursday against the Ducks. He's shown chemistry with Tavares since the beginning of basically since the preseason and training camp. So you kind of look at Max Domi and you're like, what do you do? Matt Nyes isn't coming out of the top six. So it's kind of like, what do you do? What do you do?
I think putting together a third line for this hockey team, the way they're constructed, is a bit of a lottery. Like it's just a bit of a, you kind of just you buy a bunch of lottery tickets at the start of the year to fill those holes, and hopefully they can contribute offensively and defensively, because no other team in the NHL is structured the way this team is structured. The only other team that comes close is the Edmonton Oilers. No other team in this league pays 4 forwards the money that the Leafs pay their 4 forwards. So the way they're constructed is for those guys to carry the mail. Like that's what kills me about this conversation. It's like, go find me another team that's constructed the same way the Leafs are. You can't. Mm-hmm. They're the only team that pays multiple 4 guys over $11 million. So it's like, this is how they're constructed. Like, what do you want from some of these dudes who are just like, you just have to fill holes in your bottom 6 at that point. You got to buy a bunch of lottery tickets and just hope that guys can fill holes, because you can't sign good, like, bottom 6 dudes for long-term at half decent contracts because you can't afford them. That's what I don't get. It's like, that's not how they're built for 4 guys to score. Like,
but what do you do? What do you do with a Max Domi though, Ryan? Like, what do you do with him? Like, you just keep running him out there on the third line and you got to figure it out.
Yeah, because there's a problem. There's a problem. Matt Nyes is the best thing that they've had come out of the draft in a long time, and he has a very unique skill set. You can't take him off the top line. You can't. No. You cannot. No. His upside is way bigger than Max Domi. He provides a lot more than Max Domi in terms of size and physicality. I know Max has a little bit of plays with passion, but he's still kind of a small dude, and he can get a little lost out there. And Max Domi's not a dude who can go to the front of the net and bang in rebounds. That's not his game. He's kind of like a Mitch Marner light. Like, he's Mitch Marner, but he's plays with more passion, but he's not as good as Mitch Marner. And then you look at Max Pacioretty, go down to the second line. You look at the other winger spot. I love Max Pacioretty in that role. I think he's the best veteran add. Look at the veterans they've added. They had Joe Thornton, they had Patrick Marleau, they had Wayne Simmons, they had Jason Spezza.
You could argue Spezza was right there with him. And I think the thing that Pacioretty and Spezza, not to cut you off, but I think the thing that Pacioretty and Spezza have in common is they both saw a role that needed to be filled and they're filling it.
Yes. And I think Max Pacioretty being a winger and not a center is more helpful. Like Jason Spezza couldn't play the wing or like second line center. And I thought Jason Spezza was a really great fourth liner for them. But in terms of an older player who still has a little juice left in him, who's willing to take on a different role, who still shows signs of having the elite hands and scoring capability that Max Pacioretty has. I think he's the best kind of veteran chip on his shoulder guy that they've had. And I really like him on that second line. And he proved against the Ducks. And I think every game since he's kind of gotten his feet under him this season, I know he had an injury, but he was kind of nowhere. He was healthy scratch, but he came in, he looked good. Then he got injured. Now he's come back. He looks good again. I don't want to take him out of that role either. So one guy is getting shafted on this team. And Max Domi can play center and he can play wing. So he's just, I don't know. It's a tough situation because I do think if you plugged him in on those two lines, he would be producing more offensively. Those 6 points he had were with Nylander and McMahon when they had that good little thing going for like a week.
Bobby McMahon is on the verge of coming back. So maybe you give a look of a third line with Minton between McMahon and Domi.
Yes.
And see how what happens there. Because you're adding a guy, because Pontus Holmberg, like God bless him, he scored a big goal for them against the Devils. But Pontus Holmberg is a fucking black hole for offense. Right? So if you're bringing in McMahon, who, if he's fully up to speed, can score a few goals, and a guy who can play and skate with Domi, and then you've got Minton, who even in his young career has shown he's got a very high-end two-way centerman skill set and can be the sort of defensive, the one who's responsible, easy for me to say, one who's responsible defensively on that line. So I think that's worth giving a look. And then your fourth line, you're just kind of rotating these guys around.
Come on. Like, what are you expecting from a fourth line? Just forecheck?
Right, I'm expecting a little more than what they're fucking currently doing. Like, I hate to turn on the guy. We talked about this last episode, but like, what the fuck are we doing with Ryan Reeves here? Like, what are we doing? Like, he doesn't do anything.
Yeah,
he's not contributing anything right now.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's always going to be a conversation. You're never going to be stoked about your fourth line. Like, it's nice if you have a fourth line who can, which is why Jason Spezza was a really good fourth line center, because even though he wasn't scoring a goal 30 a year, there was always a game where he like came through in the clutch and like got them a goal or two, and he showed like kind of the old signs of Spezza. Like that's what he was really great for. Like that line is like, I like Connor Dewar. Like, I think he's an okay player. Like I thought that play he made the other night against the Devils when he chipped that puck out and then Pontus got that goal, like that was an incredible play. I actually do think he's a useful player. It's just
agreed.
That line is always going to be kind of a black hole for offense. I think the problem with Ryan Reeves is just when your fourth line, like it's kind of like a perception thing. When you're watching and you can see that they're just skating a little bit faster and they're like kind of overwhelming a line with their speed, and then it's a little more impressive. The problem with Ryan Reeves is just he looks like he's lumbering 20 pounds of weight around him all the time. Like, it just looks like he's not a very athletic skater. Like, he's just tough to watch sometimes. So I think that third line that you just laid out is, on paper, it makes a lot of sense. Like, you have I like your third line center to be a defensive centerman who you trust defensively. That's why I like Fraser Minton. And the 2 goals he has scored this year were just nice. Like, he had the ability, like it was an opportunity for him to shoot the puck and bury it, and he did. So it shows you that he does have a little bit of prowess. Is he potting 20? No. But if he can just play defensively responsible, keep up with his wingers, I think that's a pretty good third line. I think, like, how can you look at those top 3 lines and not be happy if they're all like healthy? I think that's a pretty good top 3. You have 2 guys that you drafted in Minton and Nyes who are showing a lot of upside, a lot of potential. You have McMahon who has speed. I think Domi can take a lesson from Max Pacioretty in this point of his career. I know he's an extremely skilled player compared to some other dudes in the league who are playing in bottom 6, but he's not Mitch Marner. He's not Nylander. He doesn't have that skill set. So maybe I don't know. Maybe he can adopt a different style. Stop
It's
passing
finding
the puck.
exactly.
Stop passing the puck when you have an open opportunity to shoot the
Exactly.
puck. Go to the front of the net. Like play
100%.
Tweak your game a little bit. Like, just
find
Mitch
a way
Marner.
to be effective. Agreed. Find a way to be more effective. I 1,000% agree with you. I think that absolutely bang on with that. 100%. That's what Pacioretty has done so well. It's going to be interesting when David Kampf comes back to see what happens. Because you're right, I don't mind Connor Dewar either, but where does he slot in when David Kampf comes back? David Kampf needs to be off this fucking hockey team, if we're being completely honest. Because I worry about them Berube considering pulling Minton out and putting Dewar in at the third line center position, which is kind of like, okay, I get it if you want to give Minton a night off here and there, but I really like Fraser Minton, and I want him to play as much as he possibly can and see if he's got enough juice, because everyone's reporting that they're trying to find another centerman. TBD if they find that person, but by the deadline. And if they don't, you just hope that Minton's got enough juice to fill that role.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Because Max Domi at center is not it. Pontus Holmberg is Pontus Holmberg. David Kampf is David Kampf. Yeah. I mean,
one guy I want to talk about today who we haven't talked about a whole hell of a lot on the pod this year is Morgan Rielly. Now, you look at his numbers, they're not that bad. You look at the fact that they've brought in guys and it's sort of re-slotted everyone in their defensive sort of hierarchy. But at the same time, I don't think he's been great. And a guy who has been sort of looped in with the core over the years, and a guy who for many years was considered their number one defenseman, and a guy who, when he's playing at his best, can be a real difference maker for you. Haven't loved him so far this year, and I just think he's kind of there every night. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think you've always kind of had a problem with Morgan Rielly, to be honest with you. I think
I find him to be
this
a bit
is going
sleepy.
back. Yeah, this is going back like 3 years now, where you're like you've really had an issue with this dude's performance.
I find him a bit sleepy. And the reason why I get on him a little bit is because I've seen what it's like when he's operating at 100, and he's a very good hockey player. But it's like, you're a core piece of this team. You've been paid accordingly. You're in the top 4. You have the best set of defensive partners, whether it's like, you could cycle through whether he's playing with OEL, whether he's playing with Tanev, whether he's playing with McCabe. Those are 3 of the best partners he's ever had in his career here. And I just don't understand why he's not more of a difference maker on a nightly basis.
Morgan Rielly's a very interesting. I've always had a bias towards liking Morgan Rielly, to be honest with you. I think
this is a player that is a polarizing player on the Talkin Buds Leafs show, because I'm hard on him and you're easy on him. Yeah,
I and it's kind of unfair because I do criticize other guys, and this guy could be criticized in the same light as I criticize other people. But I think for him, there's just an outside perception that he's just like a really good dude, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. And he's the longest tenured Leaf. He's seen a lot since he's been here.
Yes.
He's been around. He's seen multiple management regimes and coaches, and he's just like that guy who's just the longest tenured dude. But I think I've always understood the type of player that he is. I think he's always kind of left you wanting a little bit more, because the Leafs have just always been so desperate for a number one defenseman. And I think he was always perceived as that guy. And I just don't think he is a number one defenseman.
Ryan, I don't think he's that great of a defenseman. I think when he's at his best, he's chipping in for offense. And that's another thing that everyone keeps talking about, is how little offense they continue to get from their blue line.
Yeah.
So, I can live with him not being a great defensive defenseman if he's chipping in offensively. He's not doing that. So I'm kind of like, what are you doing? You're just kind of out there skating around.
I think throughout his career, he has contributed offensively, though. I really have.
Right, but right now, he's not. And the thing that is perplexing to me, the thing that is vexing, if you will, to me, you should be able to freewheel this year more than ever before. You have, Tanev, really good. OEL, really good. Jake McCabe, really good.
Yeah.
Connor Timmy's been pretty good. So you should have more freedom to wheel and deal this year than you've had in previous years, and you're just not seeing it. Like, he looks so sleepy to me most nights.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man.
Maybe he's tired.
I think it's just, well, he does have a new kid. Like, that
hey,
could
listen,
be on. Hey,
you
have a new kid. You need to speak to this.
Yes, listen, I have a 5-month-old kid. I understand. It's tiring, okay? So I get it.
I just think that Morgan Rielly, you know what I like about Morgan Rielly? This is why I defend him, okay? I know he's paid accordingly, but he also didn't hold his team over a barrel. He took a pretty good contract for a dude who's had a pretty good career. He had that career year in 21-22 when he had 68 points. He had 58 points last year in 72 games. Like, he was almost a point-a-game player last season. That's what I like about Morgan Rielly, number one. Number two, he has evidence of showing up in the biggest times for them when they really need him. That's what I like about Morgan Rielly, too. When you look at that one round that they won, who was their best player, in my opinion? It was arguably him.
That's what I mean when I say I've seen the high end. I've seen how good he can be.
I think I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I'm not like saying you're wrong. I'm not disagreeing with you. Obviously, I want to see more from him. Like, I want to see more from. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm at with this one. Like, I agree with you. Like, yeah, I agree with you. He can be better. Like, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, he can be better.
And if we're talking about depth scoring, getting some offensive contributions from your blue line would definitely go a long way.
Well, what's hurt him too, though, offensively, is the power play. The power play's hurt him offensively because he's been in and out of the power play. The power play, it's still like Austin Matthews come back. Now it sucks. They're 20th in the league.
Yeah. Like, don't tell me that this team doesn't fucking defer to Austin Matthews when the second he comes back, their power play goes in the fucking toilet again. Like, don't tell me that. The second he comes back, we're right back to looking like the shit power play that they had before he left. And I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm saying I don't know what the fuck it is. I don't know what like Jedi mind trick this guy utilizes, but it's like, oh my God. Austin Matthews is in the head of every single one of his teammates. It's wild to watch. Mitch Marner at the top of that fucking list.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what's really hurt Morgan Rielly in terms of point production is he's not getting that consistent power play time, and the power play just isn't contributing. So I think that's another thing that's factoring in for his lack of offense. You know who really can get a power play going? For all the shit we slung at this guy, you know who could really get a power play humming? Sheldon Keefe. Who? Because look who's the number one power play in the NHL right now. New Jersey Devils. The New Jersey Devils, that was the most classic Sheldon Keefe game I've ever seen in my life the other night. That team just dominates. He's just behind the bench. That team just dominates. Fuck. Yes. Yeah. Just so dominates. Get goalied. Just, man, how many times has Sheldon Keefe been in that situation? They were so bad in his first two periods of that hockey game. Holy shit. They just weren't. Yeah, man. They just weren't ready to play. They just weren't ready to play. That can skate. The New Jersey Devils. Wow. They can fly around the ice. Oh, yeah. The Leafs had a very, very, very difficult time. Yep. Very difficult time. Yeah. Keeping up with them. Anyways, I think we're going to get out of here today. I tell you what, man, their schedule lately, a few weeks ago when they played like 3 games and like 15 nights, we could have done an episode every day. Lately, like to do 2 a week, we're having to find pockets of time to do these. That's why we're coming at you on a Friday morning, because they got a back-to-back weekend. I guess they got a couple of days off from Sunday to Wednesday, but they're in kind of they're in the midst of a 3 and 4 nights here. They're like sprinting towards the Christmas. Basically, like they play a lot of hockey. Yep. And we'll wait and see what the situation is with Anthony Stolarz this weekend. I'm guessing Hildeby probably gets that Buffalo Sabre start on Sunday. If I was a gambling man, that's what I would put my money on. That 5 p.m. game on Sunday.
I know, right in the middle of football. There's
a couple of 4 o'clock games too.
I love Leaf hockey more than anything, but it just fucks with my Sunday when they play on a Sunday. I'm just like, no, today is football. Saturday night is Leafs. Sunday is football. We can't, like, I'll get the 2 TVs going and I'll obviously be watching the game, but it's like, I love the NFL because I can just sit and kind of, when you watch a Leaf game and you do Leaf content, you're kind of dialed in and you're like really focused and you're really paying attention. Whereas like football, I can just kind of sit back and turn my brain off and just enjoy the beauty that is the National Football League.
Yeah.
And the fucking Buffalo Sabres are getting in the way of me doing that.
I know, and everyone who plays fantasy, it's week 1 pretty much for everyone and for fantasy playoffs. So it's like, great. I got to watch the Sabres. What about Cooper Kupp giving me 0 fantasy points in my week in my first round matchup of the playoffs? Thanks, bud. That game really fucked everyone last night.
Game. Oh my God, man. That game. Tons of hype around that game because it's like 2 teams that are fighting for a playoff spot, and that was a snoozer.
Yeah.
So taking a look at their schedule here, I'm thinking we'll be back on Monday. They play Saturday, Sunday, and then they don't play again until Wednesday. So we'll be back on Monday night to discuss all the happenings from the weekend and the latest. I'm checking Twitter again right now. As of right now, still no update on Anthony Stolarz, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. If you'd like to join us on Monday and for the rest of the season, hit that like and subscribe button below. If you're listening to the audio version, do the same thing. I say it every week. Our audio numbers continue to get better and better, and that's because of you beautiful people liking and reviewing, subscribing, all that fun stuff.
Spread the word. Tell your friends.
We really appreciate it. We will see you guys on Monday.